So hi there and welcome to my vlog. Today we're going to be doing another editing session. I did actually go out in the week and did another video. I went out to the woods trying to capture some autumn colour, looking for a bit of autumnal compositions. Unfortunately, when I got there it was right in the middle of Storm Alex, and I don't know if it's just my mood or the never-ending rain, but I just didn't quite get the shots that I wanted. So rather than go without a video for this week, what we're going to do is look at my shots from last week and edit one of them up. So I've got the probably my favourite shot actually. I've got the waterfall. I say waterfall's very glamorous for this. It was more of a trickle, but the little cascade, let's call it the cascade, the little cascade going underneath the log, and I created sort of quite a fairy tale glowy kind of image, and I was really pleased with it. So what I'm going to do is run you through my process for this image and just show you how I applied that sort of dreamy, almost dreamy kind of effect. So not going to waffle on for ages before we get going, so grab a brew and let's get editing. Okay, so here we go. This was the final image that I created, and this is where we started. So let's get cracking. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to add a little bit of contrast to this, about 20%. Yeah, about 20. Then what I'm going to do is drop down my highlights because it was very overexposed in places. Let's go down to about 80. There we go. I'm going to drop my, I'm going to pull some detail out of the shadows there. There we go. The whites, again, I think we'll just drop them down a touch. And blacks, again, we want to pull some of the details out of the blacks. So I'm just going to increase those a bit. There we go, about 35. Now, because there's so much nice texture in this image, I just want to increase the texture a touch. But be careful, because you can go a bit over the top with the texture slider. So not too much. There you go, about plus 15 is great. And I'm also going to add a tiny bit of clarity, and I'm going to dehaze my image slightly, just adds a little bit of extra contrast. So I'm going to go 10 and 10. Okay, so as a starting point, I'm also just going to drop my vibrance down slightly, just to mute back some of those tones. But what I'm going to do is actually recover some of the greens later on. So here we go down. I'm going to go down to my curve now. I'm going to put a bit of an S curve on here. So I'm going to add a bit of contrast into my shadows. I'm going to lift out some of the detail in the highlights. But then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to lift out the blacks slightly. So if you can see there, it just pulls them away from pure black to a slightly more muted colour. And because we actually I slightly overexposed this image when I took it, I'm going to drop down my highlights ever so slightly as well. So there we go. Oh, let's have a look at the histogram. That's looking quite nice now, so we've got that positioned really nicely. Okay, so now we're going to go into the hue, saturation and luminance. Make sure you've got it clicked so you can see the hue, saturation and luminance all in one place, just by clicking on the colour wheel. There we go. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to do anything with the reds, but I'm just going to drop the yellows into a slightly more orange tint. I think just to richen those browns up ever so slightly. Saturation I'm going to leave as it is, and luminance, let's just bring that up a touch. So as you can see, that just adds a bit, pulls some of those nice rich tones out a little bit. So the next thing we're going to go down to is the greens. So I'm going to just pull my greens slightly the other way. There we go. I think that'll be enough. And add a little bit of saturation back in. So about plus 10. There we go. And luminance, I'm going to drop the greens down slightly just because I want to just get a nice earthy feel to this image. So not that much. There we go, about -5. And then I'm just going to tweak my blues, my aqua slightly. So just to pull it slightly away from the green, a little bit of saturation, and drop down the luminance slightly. So as you can see, that's just had a little bit of an effect on the water. So I'm not going to change the blue, the purples, or the magentas. I'm going to leave those as they are. What I am going to do is add a little bit of split toning, only very subtle. I'm going to go to the greens. There we go. Look, so see what we're doing. We're pulling out a bit of extra vibrancy into that green now, and shadows. Oh, don't know what's happening there. I think my computer's overheating. Gonna pull that ever so slightly more in the blue. Just give it. There we go. Yeah, just a little bit. Just brings a little bit of extra colour into the water there. I think that looks nice. Sharpening, I'm going to leave that as it is. Noise reduction, this was ISO 800, so I am going to just add a little bit of noise reduction. There we go, about 20 onto the noise reduction. I'm not going to enable any lens corrections because I just don't think it needs it. And then a little bit of vignetting. So here we go, about -15 on that one, I think. In fact, let's not. So what I'm going to do in a moment is just use a gradient mask, just at the top and the bottom. I think that will be better than using a radial filter. I don't think we changed any of these settings. No, I didn't change any of these settings. So let's go back up. So the next thing we're going to do, the graduated filter. I'm going to go here. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is just drop my exposure down on this. Oops, just turn the overlay off. How far do you want to go? Not that far. About -0.25. I can't remember exactly the settings that I had before, but I think that's probably close enough. And let's do the same down here. But I want to darken that up a bit more. So I'm going to drop that down to about -0.8. There we go. It's looking good. So the next thing I want to do, I'm going to crop this image slightly. I can cycle through the different crop overlays by pushing the O key, just as a reminder. I think I've said this before. And yeah, so we're going to go with this one, I think. Just getting those diagonals in, because we've got the diagonal here in the background. We've got the diagonal here from the log, and then we've got some of these rocks creating another diagonal here. So I'm going to pull this up to about there. That's right. Do I want to crop those leaves out? Yeah, let's crop that. Let's crop those leaves out a little bit. Okay, so that's looking good. So the next thing I want to do is to use the radial filters to just add a bit more drama to this image. So firstly, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create one here. I'm going to on the log, because what I want to do is just do a bit more sort of dodging and burning on this area to just add a bit more contrast, just lift out that log slightly. It's the focal point at the end of the day, so let's lift that out. So I'm going to increase my exposure in this area. So as you can see, it just really pulls out a bit more detail in there. So just drop down my highlights, add a bit more into the shadows. Want to drop the whites? No, we don't want to drop the whites. The blacks. I think we don't want to change the blacks. So there we go. So that's good. Added a little bit more of a focal point to that area. And then the next thing I want to do is add another radial filter up here. So I want to create an element of glow here. So what I'm going to do here is actually drop this one down slightly, just to try and add a bit more drama to it. So it was okay. So let's just turn those off so we can have a look at our image so far. That's where we're at. It's looking nice. Just got to double check my white balance actually. Yeah, no, actually we'll leave the white balance as it is. That's absolutely fine. So the next thing we need to do is apply these effects to the other two images, which are in my focus stack. So this has got a lot of detail in the background. The next one's actually got more detail in the midground. And this one here has got a lot of detail in the foreground. So what we're going to do is apply these effects. I'm going to copy that. So I've copied all my settings. I'm going to apply those to that image. So there we go, that's done that. And apply them to this one as well. There we go, so we've now got all the same settings applied to all three images. So what we can do now is take these into Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is select all three images. I'm going to right click this and I'm going to click Edit in, Open as Layers in Photoshop. Okay, so I've got my three layers open in Photoshop. Let's just double check they're all there. Okay. So there's my foreground, my midground, and my background. So what I'm going to do is make sure all three layers are selected. Then I'm going to click Edit and Auto Align Layers, just to make sure that all the important elements line up correctly. There we go. So let's just double check that they're lined up. Going to turn each off in turn, and I'm just looking at the middle log just to make sure that there's no discrepancies, and they all look great to me. Okay, so perfect. So the next thing I'm going to do is go to Edit and Auto Blend Layers, and I'm going to stack the images and leave all the settings on default. And what this will do is just take the sharpest elements from each of the three images and blend them into one picture. Okay, that looks great. So what I'm going to do now is just check that that's blended okay. So I'm going to look at my foreground. Yep, that's nice and sharp. I'm going to look at my midground. Again, that's beautifully sharp. And my background, perfectly sharp. Right, that's great. So I'm just going to give that a little crop now, just to make sure there's no discrepancies in the borders. Just because I find sometimes when you do the auto blend, the edges don't quite line up correctly. So that's perfect. Let's save that, and then we'll be able to open up the image back up in Lightroom. Okay, so here we go. This is the image that we've just pulled back in from Photoshop, and I'm just going to give it a couple of last little edits and little tweaks. So the first thing I'm going to do, that little leaf at the bottom's annoying me a little bit, so I'm going to use the spot removal to take that out, zoom that in, there we go, let Lightroom do its magic. It's not the best clone out ever, but I think that will do for now, just to demonstrate the idea. And then to get the final atmosphere into the image, I'm going to add another radial filter up here. Turn that round slightly, put it up, there we go. And the first thing I'm going to do, adjust my colour temperature because I want to get this nice yellow glow to it. I want to just get that nice sort of almost sun coming through the leaves and illuminating them. And then I'm going to use the dehaze, but rather than using a positive dehaze, I'm going to use a negative. So just so it adds a little bit of softening to the image and just sort of creates a bit of a glow. We could also boost up the exposure ever so slightly, I think. Let's go 0.25. There we go. Maybe just a little bit of contrast just to, so we don't lose too much detail in the shadows. There we go. Right, let's just turn that off, and here's the final image, and I'm going to put it up on screen now. There we go.